For many fans, the first Mafia game set a gold standard for narrative in games that the series has been chasing ever since. And now, with Mafia The Old Country on the horizon, there's quiet hope starting to build again. Maybe this is the one. Maybe this is where Mafia becomes a core pillar of AAA gaming again. But what exactly made Mafia so special in the first place? To answer that, we need to take a look back at the entire Mafia series. Each game has tried to capture a different era of crime storytelling. Some hit the mark, others not so much. This is where it all began. The original Mafia, released in 2002, wasn't just a good game, it was different. I remember so well playing this for the first time when I was a kid, and I was in complete awe. I know it's funny to say this now, looking at the original footage, but I felt I was playing a movie at the time. A mobster movie. In a time when open-world games were becoming playgrounds of chaos, Mafia slowed things down. Instead of giving you a world full of side activities, distractions and mayhem, it gave you a world that just felt real. You played as Tommy Angelo, a taxi driver turned reluctant gangster. And while that premise may sound trivial today, back then it was kind of a revelation. The game didn't just throw you into random shootouts and chase sequences. It made you feel like you're part of the Mafia. Every mission was grounded in story, and every cutscene felt like it mattered. Inspired by 1930s America, the game took place in the fictional city of Lost Haven. Being a mixture of New York, Chicago and San Francisco, the city felt like a character in and of itself. From the vintage cars to the era-authentic radio broadcasts, everything worked together to create an atmosphere that hadn't been really done before in gaming. The police actually enforced traffic laws. If you ran a red light or sped too much, they'd chase you down. That annoyed some players, sure, but it also gave the world a layer of realism that other games at the time ignored. Now, if I ask you, tell me one mission you remember from the first Mafia game, you'll almost surely tell me that goddamn racing one. Mission 5 Fair Play was a brutally difficult race that caused many players to rage quit and smash their keyboards at the time. But here's the thing, it did become iconic. And not for the wrong reasons, in my opinion. Yes, it was extremely difficult, but this mission underlined the fact that you're not playing a power fantasy. It was grounded in realism. So, naturally, it can't be easy to place first in a race surrounded by professional drivers, but your character's job was being in a car all day long, so it's not that far-fetched you could actually pull it off. Because even in its difficulty, this mission reminded you this game's theme is about rising through the ranks. Slowly and painfully. And when it all came to a head in the game's final moments, well, Mafia has one of the most memorable endings in a video game, which for those of you who haven't played it, I won't spoil here. The first Mafia game is as close to a masterpiece as you could get in that era. Of course, it wasn't perfect, but it was so different in its approach and so well executed that it made it truly an unforgettable video game. Mafia II came out in 2010 and had the impossible task of living up to the legacy of the original. And for a lot of players, it almost did. This time we followed Vito Scaletta, a war veteran trying to find his place in a criminal world that had changed while he was away. The game was set in Empire Bay, another fictional mashup of several American cities. The first thing that hits you about Mafia II isn't the gunplay or the mission. Similar to the original, it's about the mood. The soundtrack alone is a standout for this game, as the likes of Bobby Darin and Dean Martin set the stage with their iconic voices. And while Empire Bay might not have been interactive in the way other open worlds were at the time, it still looked and sounded incredible. You just needed to experience the snow-covered streets in the opening chapters of the game, and you knew the sequel understood how important is the setting. Vito's journey felt more cinematic this time round, more polished. The cutscenes were of an amazing quality, the voice acting nailed every emotional beat, and the pacing for the first half of the game was almost flawless. You went from petty crimes to full-blown mob enforcer in a way that just felt natural. But then, something changed. The back half of Mafia II feels like a different game. Missions start to feel disconnected, time skips happen without much context, and characters disappear or show up again without much explanation. Nothing of this nature was confirmed, but I don't think you need a developer interview to tell you something was cut from the game. In the first Mafia game, following the rules wasn't optional. It was part of the world's pressure. That sense of restraint made you feel like you were really living inside that era. Every decision, even speeding, had weight. Mafia II, on the other hand, felt more like a traditional third-person action game. Sure, combat was more fluid and cover mechanics were refined, but with that shift came a loss of identity. Now, that doesn't mean Mafia II failed. Even though the second half of the game was rushed, the ending still delivered one of the most memorable finales in gaming. In the end, Mafia II was a step forward in style, even if it stumbled in substance. It tried to refine the original's formula while adding more cinematic flair. Was it better than the first? I, for one, don't think so. Do I still think it's a great game? Heck yes. Now this is where things really start to spiral down. Mafia III was ambitious, and honestly, before the game came out, from a setting, theme and direction standpoint, it looked like it could become the best game in the series. Set in 1968 in New Bordeaux, a stand-in for New Orleans, it tackled themes most games wouldn't touch: racism, war trauma and systemic corruption. And it did it through the eyes of Lincoln Clay, a Vietnam veteran looking for revenge against the mobsters who betrayed him. From a storytelling perspective, Mafia III was bold. It used a documentary-style narrative structure, cutting between gameplay and interviews with characters reflecting on the events years later. It was fresh, unique, and mature. But then you actually played the game, and the cracks began to show. I, for one, wanted to love this game. I thought I definitely would. As a fan of open worlds, even the more bloated Ubisoft-style checklist games are up my alley. So for me, this being a massive open world wasn't a bad thing at all. However, the mission design being repetitive is an understatement. You were sent across the map to take down rackets, recruit underbosses, and build your empire. And then you did it again, and again, and again. The emotional high points from the story were buried beneath layers of checklist design. And even though I played this game back when it released, I still remember I could clear up entire areas filled with enemies just by hiding behind cover, whistling to draw them in, silently take them down, and repeat that process throughout the game. I started to shoot my weapon intentionally just so I could alert the enemies and feel some excitement. And that's not good for a video game. The world of New Bordeaux looked amazing, but it didn't feel alive. And when you have a huge open world that doesn't feel alive, unless you're Mad Max, where that's the whole point of the open world, your game will not feel good to play. Still, Lincoln Clay himself was a fantastic protagonist. He was driven, complex, and had real motivations. And the game wasn't afraid to show the consequences of violence or to make you question your actions. But for every powerful cutscene, there was another copy-paste mission waiting for you. Mafia III had the story chops, it had the setting, but it forgot the rhythm and the moment-to-moment gameplay. And in doing so, turned the Mafia series from a fantastic, immersive mobster game into, quite frankly, a boring mess. Before we go into the Old Country, I have to quickly mention the definitive editions. In 2020, Hangar 13 released the Mafia Trilogy, a collection that included a full remake of Mafia I, a remaster of Mafia II, and a cleaned-up version of Mafia III. The Mafia I remake, titled Definitive Edition, was easily the standout. Built from the ground up, it modernized the original while keeping its soul intact. The voice acting, cutscenes, and driving all felt fresh, and it reintroduced Tommy Angelo's story to a whole new generation. The Mafia II remaster, not so lucky. It launched with bugs, performance issues, and didn't really fix the pacing problems of the original. And Mafia III's re-release was mostly a technical pass. Better visuals and higher textures, but not much else. So the Mafia Trilogy served as a reminder that Mafia, at its best, is about atmosphere, character, and consequence. And now we're here, Mafia The Old Country, a prequel set in early 1900s Sicily, decades before Tommy drove a single cab or Vito fired a single shot. This is seemingly where it all began, in a time of sulfur mines, horse-drawn carts, and the earliest whispers of organized crime. We'll play as Enzo Favara, an orphaned laborer who rises through the ranks of the Torrisi crime family. The first family, in a sense. And the biggest shift? Hangar 13 isn't chasing scale this time, thankfully. This game won't be another open world filled with map icons and busy work. No rackets to micromanage and no empire building systems to slow the story down. The Old Country is linear, focused, and narrative driven. What's really cool about this game is that for the first time in the series, The Old Country includes full Sicilian voiceover subtitled for authenticity. And I feel that's not just for inclusivity's sake. This game isn't just set in Sicily. It wants to feel like it belongs there. But of course, all of that means nothing without the tone or immersive gameplay, because Mafia was never about chaos. It was about consequence. It's not about giving you power, it's about showing you what that power costs. Now, this game being a lot more linear is music to my ears. I know I've said earlier I love open world games, but I think this is exactly the treatment a new Mafia game needs. Allegedly, this game will take about 13 hours or so to complete. So a narrative-focused Mafia game, paced in the same length as the likes of Dead Space or Resident Evil 4? Yes please. So if The Old Country can come even close in quality as those two games, I think the Mafia series has a shot of becoming extremely relevant again, with this game reaching the heights of the original. However, if what we've seen so far in trailers is just eye candy, not unlike some Hellblade 2, then I think we can safely carry the Mafia series tied up in our trunk and bury it somewhere deep in the desert.